Welcome everybody to this June 2024 meeting of the Metropolitan Study Group of the SRIA. Delighted to see all of you gathered here in this way for our meeting today. And it's wonderful we have such an international selection of people joining us alongside all the people that are gathered at the Atlantis bookstore in London, which is the in-person home and heart of the Metropolitan Study Group now these days. And a big thank you to Geraldine Beskin and Bali as well for allowing us to hold these meetings from the Atlantis bookstore. And I want to wish you all a very special, blessed, and very thought-provoking meeting today. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, who is our dear and beloved Frater Hasu. And Hasu, I'm just going to pin your image to the screen for the purpose of our recording. And it gives me great pleasure to hand over to you now, Hasu. Go ahead. All yours.
Thank you, Frater Sheen. Thank you to everyone for coming along today. But I must also thank, before I start, Frater Alistair for pushing me to do this paper. And I could not think of a subject matter. And he suddenly said, well, you know, there is something that I've been curious about. And I said, please don't ask me to fulfill your curiosity. So he suggested that why don't I look at this subject matter of the gates, the Vedic gates. Out of interest, I said yes. And then I realized, what have I landed myself into? Because even I had never thought of those gates before in any other sense except reading the Gita, and they're mentioned in there, and you just go through them and you read a little bit, and that was about it, and then you kept it at that. But as I started this, it has become a fascinating subject. So let me start firstly by saying that the gates are no more than the observation of the human body. The human body is made, as we know, the external body, the physical body is made what we would refer to in the Vedas as the Mahabhutas, the elements, which are 5 in the Vedas: air, water, wind, earth, and ether. Many of us will recognize the first 4 from our SRI Zalato grade. The 5th one is a unique one to the Vedas. Also, it is only in Buddhism, they only have the 4 gates. But obviously, these are researches for the future. But let me start off by firstly identifying the 9 gates. The 9 gates are the 2 eyes, the 2 nostrils, the mouth, the ears, the reproductive organs, if you wish to call them, the urethra and the anus. It's interesting that some say the vagina is a gate as well, but I think that you can interpret it as you wish to. Now, let's start with talking about the 9 gates. Now, these gates form a package, but they face certain directions. The number of the gates that face east are 5, which are the front-facing 5 gates. They're the 2 eyes, which are known as Khadrota, which is the glowworm, and Arimukhi, which is the torchlight. Now, if you think about it, it's through that vision that we see the world and make judgments sometimes in haste and irrationally. So the deeper question becomes, does what we see exist in uniformity, or is it unique to each individual and their perception? So it is our perception, what we see visually, externally. Now, these 2 gates are also supported by Dyuman, the sun, the light. That is the light in our eyes, which is rather more than the darkness that surrounds us at times. So it's not necessarily the physical light, it's also the spiritual light that we may have access to once we start understanding ourselves. The next two are the nostrils, the life-giving force, which is the air which we breathe and is inhaled and exhaled through the two eastern gates, facing gates, which are the pipes of the nostrils, and they're called Nalini and Nalini. It's thought that these pipes, we enjoy the aromas of the material world. The living being enjoys the Avduta, or airs and smells. Through these gates, the living entity goes to the city called Saurabha, which is the city of orders. Now, as we go along, we have the mouth, which is the next gate. The mouth represents the sensation of consuming or of nourishment, and the sensation of tasting and distinguishing between the bitter and the sweet, truth and falsehood. The ears, through the two gates, one faces the northern and one faces the southern side. And where the places differs, kinds of, you hear the different sounds, and these sounds reflect how we observe and how we understand, how we eliminate, and how we perceive the world to be. Through the gates on the western side of the city, there's a sensation of evacuation and sexual pleasure and the experience. During his journeys, the king goes into the next bit where we will narrate the story about the king traveling through these gates. The last two are the urethra and the anus. These organs are part of the 5 working senses, as mentioned before. And something that is very interesting, that these 5 senses also, if you think about these elements, though they are the 2 elements that are below the earth, as we would like to sort of describe them. They're not, they're physically or spiritually low. And if you physically put it in a context, they'll be below ground. Through the sensation of activities, those 2 gates are also providers of energy or existence of energy. And of course, as I mentioned previously, they also are connected to the reproductive organs, which in a way have a different narrative. Now, we've gone through sort of roughly what the 5 gates are. In the Bhagavad Gita, the story of the 9 gates involves a king, his friend, and a queen. So it's a narrative of a journey, as such. We have heard of many a journey in all the orders we belong to. You know, in our SRI, we also have journeys of sorts, spiritual, esoteric. But this story is interesting because King Purajan, whose name means one who enjoys the body, his friend was Avignat, Saka. Saka means friend. Now, who were very close friends, they spent time together, they did everything together. Now, Avignat Saka is also a metaphor for the Supreme Soul. So now we're getting, I hope that the narrative becomes a bit more interesting as you can realize who the king was and who the Supreme Soul is. Over time, the king decided that he wanted to wander around and see the world and see places. So he wanted from his friend who shared wisdom, and he moved away from that wisdom, and he found freedom.
Yes. I'll give it to you.
And he found freedom and wandering where he chanced upon a beautiful city. Now, this city was a city of 9 gates, which was called Naudwara. Naudwara in Sanskrit means 9 gates. On entering the city, he gazed upon the beautiful maiden who was guarded by a 5-headed serpent and 11 bodyguards. Her name was Puranjani. This was the queen of the city of 9 gates. Over a period, he got stayed there. He lived a life of enjoyment, pleasure, and eventually he got married to the queen, lived a life of bliss. But as everything happens, the bliss has to come to an end. Now, this happens because the enemies outside decided that this city no longer should exist. And the enemy was called Kal, darkness. He decided to attack the city, destroy everything, and then decided that he was going to capture the king. Now, there's an interesting quote. Now, when the king, before this event happens, the king asked the queen about the origins of her and her attendants. And the queen replies, "O best of human beings, I do not know who has begotten me. I cannot speak to you perfectly about this, nor do I know the name of the origins of the associates with me. O great hero, we only know that we are existing in this place. We do not know what will come after. Indeed, we are foolish that we do not care to understand who has created this beautiful place for us to reside. All these men and women with me are known as my friends, and the snake who always remains awake protects the city even during my sleeping hours. So much I know. I do not know anything beyond this. You have somehow or other come here. This is certainly a great fortune for me. I wish all auspicious things for you. You have a great desire to satisfy your senses. And all my friends and I shall try our best in all respects to fulfill your desires. I've just arranged the city of 9 gates for you so that you can have all the kind of sense gratification. You may live here for 100 years and everything for you sense gratification will be supplied." So the king lived in the city of 9 gates. Now, the queen mentioned the 11 bodyguards. Now, these 11 bodyguards are in fact can be broken down into 2 groups of 5. The first of knowledge acquiring, sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. And the rest of the 5 are the working senses, which are walking, grasping, speaking, reproduction, and evacuation. All these senses are under the control of the mind and are considered servants of the mind. Now, we also mentioned that the queen was protected by a 5-headed serpent. The serpent represents air, which we breathe. And the 5 forms of air we breathe are, one is called pranavayu. This is the inward moving air responsible for inhalation and the intake of energy. Next one is apnavayu. This is a downward moving air responsible for elimination and expulsion of waste. There's samanavayu. This is the balancing air responsible for digestion and assimilation of nutrients. And then there's the udanavayu. This is the upward moving air responsible for speech, energy, and willpower. The last one is vyanavayu. This is the pervasive air responsible for circulation and distribution of energy throughout the body. So those metaphors are actually, they represent the physical activities within our bodies. So this metaphor of the 9 gates is the human body with the 9, but within those 9 live are these elements that support it. Now, also, as I said, when I mentioned Panch Bhuta first, which is the 5 elements. Now, each of those elements also controls certain elements within our bodies. So, ether is sound, air is for touch, fire is eyes, water is tongue, earth is the nose. And those who practice yoga will recognize also the chakras, which are again the start from the lowest, working their way up. Now, each of those chakras also are represented in the 5 elements. So this narrative, in a way, begins as a story, but we then go into the sense that there is more to this than we think about.
States
We have
on our own political dynamics, and I'm guilty of that
Sorry,
as well.
Hasu, I'll mute that person.
The commonality that
Go ahead.
okay. So also, our nature consists of three materials, which are Rajas, Tamas, and Sattvic. Now, Rajas is passion, state of energy, action, positivity. The nature of Rajas is attraction, longing, and attachment. Expressions of emotions or attraction, attachment to fruit of our labors, and very highly emotionally charged. Now, tamas is ignorance, a state of darkness, inertia, inactivity, and materialism, ignorance and delusion. To reach bliss and self-satisfaction, one must abandon all three. In the narrative of the king, the soul always imitates the queen, the material world. So each is in a way playing each other's reflections. So the soul, this is the duality of mind and body. The brain is a receptacle of the accumulated experiences of the human in the physical world. All the observations stored in various parts of the brain. It also becomes a processor which makes you aware of the futility of existence. In the inner spiritual self is ignored and only the material pleasures are pursued. So now this gate of nine city, city of nine gates, eventually, like everything else, there's a time when a period comes for its destruction. The destruction happens, as I said, when, as a man who's sort of cursed with mortality, the city of the nine gates follows the same process, mortality. A king named Kadvega, which is time, attacks the city with his army of 360 male soldiers and their 360 female companions. Now you can see the number 360 a year. Male companions day, female companions night. The five-headed serpent fights in vain to keep the city safe, i.e. the senses trying to keep us alive. But it finally succumbs and the city is destroyed, and both the king and the serpent are led away as prisoners of time. So time becomes the master again. This is a wonderful allegorical reflection of the desires of the mortal self not to let go of the physical and reach the supreme, which leads in the cycle of rebirth, death, to be repeated over and over and over. Now, there's another part of the story where, because when the king was dying, the only thing he could think about is his queen, rather than the supreme, the supreme soul. And to this end, he's reborn, but this time he's reborn as a wife, and the wife is born as a male. So the eternal cycle of birth and death again continues with reverse roles. Now, there's a quote in the Bhagavad Gita which says, Sarva karmani mansa sanyasa sukham vasi navdware pure dehi nahi kurvanna karayan. All activities by the mind, having renounced, remain happy. The self-control of the nine gates in the city that embodies beings never certainly doing anything not and causing not to be done. Now, Krishna compares the body with its openings to a city of nine gates. The soul is like the king of the city, whose administration is carried out the ministry of the ego, intellect, mind, sense, and life energy. The reign over the body continues until time, in the form of death, snatches away the corporeal frame. However, even while the reign continues, the enlightened yogis do not see themselves as the body, nor do they consider themselves as the lord of the body. Rather, they hold the body and all activities performed by it belonging to God. Renouncing all actions through the mind, such as enlightened souls, remains happily situated in the body. This is also called Sakshibhav, or the attitude of being the detached, observe all that is happening around. The analogy in this verse is also given in the Swatvatra Upashanad. The body consists of 9 gates, 2 ears, 1 mouth, and 2 nostrils, 2 eyes, anus, and genitals. In material consciousness, the soul residing in the body identifies itself with this city of 9 gates. Within this body also sits the Supreme Lord, who is the controller of all living beings in the world. When the soul establishes this connection with the Lord, it becomes free like him, even while residing in the body. So these are the sort of concepts that were produced in the Gita for man to realize without being too deeply philosophical, to think about the physical self by mirroring those visual things that we understand: cities, gates, life, desires. But the spiritual meaning of this was beyond many. And I think it remains beyond many even today. I mean, the embodied soul lives in the city of 9 gates. The activity of the body or the figurative city of the body are conducted automatically by the particular modes of nature. The soul, although subjecting himself to the conditions of the body, can be beyond those conditions if he so desires. Owing only to forgetfulness of his superior nature, he identifies with the material body and therefore suffers. But Krishna consciousness, he can survive his real position and thus come out of his embodiment. Therefore, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, one at once becomes completely aloof from bodily activity in such a controlled life, in which his deliberations are changed. He lives happily within the city of 9 gates. The 9 gates are again the abode of the Supreme Soul, as much as the soul that is traveling. We can think about this whole idea of gates in many other senses as well, because if we have this concept of ourselves, we tend to lose our own paths and visions because we are too engrossed in our own daily existence. Each gate is ignored until we see or hear something, and we opt to ignore it rather than act on it. I always say that the most important gates are the eyes, because what we see, we have time. The ears, because what we hear takes longer than what the eye sees and distinguishes and makes a decision. So the gates of the ears tend to be a bit more prominent in my thinking. I think human beings think, they listen, they see, but they don't connect everything in the right order. So should we listen first, open the gates of the ears first, look to the eyes, observe, let the mind think about the two combined, and then decide how we confer or confront what we are visualizing or what we are left as a problem. I have many other things that I would like to say, but I think as I was given this as a particular idea, I would suggest that there are many things that I have to develop on this, because this has become like a rabbit hole now. And there are so many, the chakras now come into it. I found the actions of the planets, which are now come with the 9 gates, how each gate is connected to a different planet, the different, because again, it's very interesting in the Vedic culture, we don't have 7 planets, we have 9 planets. We have 2 added, which are the nodes of the moon, Rahu and Ketu. So they also play a different role in the 9 gates. I'm always worried about trying to overdo and overanalyze things and produce opinions. But I feel that this short narrative may give others an opportunity to or for me to create a discussion with others.
I'm just going to remove the pin here, and we're going to switch to speaker view for the purpose of the recording. So thank you very much, Hasu. This is a fascinating subject, and I'd look forward now to opening this dialogue up. So if anyone has any particular questions or observations they'd like to share with us all, and particularly to ask of Frater Hasu, please, it would be helpful from my point of view, you could raise your hand in the little reactions tab at the bottom of the Zoom screen. That would be helpful. Firstly, I'd like to hand over to Brig, please. All yours, Brig.
Thank you, Shane. Hasu, fascinating and quite succinct presentation, and thank you for that, because as you correctly say, you could academically start disappearing into nether regions with this. First of all, a couple of observations. Yes, what has struck me is we are all well, I think possibly most of us, dare I say, are too engrossed in our own existence to actually start looking at what we are as personalities and indeed as entities. The Vedic culture, 9 planets, yes, I take that. But my question is, and with the greatest of respect, being deaf, I probably didn't hear this. Where is in your teaching, in the Vedic teachings, where does the soul reside?
There's the soul resides within the body. Is the king that I mentioned, the wandering soul. Now that's the allegory of the soul, and his friend the Saka is the supreme soul who he stays with, but then he decides, no, I don't like this situation, so he wants to go and reside in a body and enjoy the pleasures of the physical self. So the soul also is very much considered to be part of this sort of part and parcel of the package of the human body. So, we cannot necessarily do good and the soul does bad, or the soul cannot do bad and we do good. It's a symbiotic relationship. The soul enjoys all the good things we do because it knows that in its journey, the good we do will be the credit, will be the plus. Whereas the negativity we do will then condemn the soul back to the recycle of birth and death.
Thank you, Hasu, and I do think, and of course this is a personal opinion, that craft Freemasonry has an indication, certainly in the 3rd degree, about the soul and the continuity of the life hereafter, and it is never, or very rarely, discussed, and we are taught that the 3rd degree teaches us how to die. Well, I have to say, and it's a personal opinion, I've never had any personal instruction from a senior brother about the process of passing to the Grand Lodge above. And I think this is a conversation we all ought to have, and happily you have introduced this subject, and I think this ought to promote a conversation about it.
Brig, can I say that's a wonderful comment? Thank you very much for that, those kind words. But we, as you've mentioned, Freemasonry, I think is a bit of a misnomer to say that it'll teach you how to die. But why don't you teach someone how to live? Because if you live a good life, death won't be you won't have to be taught how to die. You'll just accept that it is an end that's going to come. But in your time, when you're a living being, you have tried to do good. So I think that is a metaphors of the two ends of masonry. One teaching you, okay, we're going to teach you how to die. You can't teach anyone how to die. You can teach everyone how to live.
Hasu, dear brother, thank you for your answer.
Thank you very much, Brig. And following up on that, I would say to the members of the SRIA who are aware of the secret words relating to the grade 6 ceremony, the very purpose of those secret words is to remind us how to truly live.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us of that.
Thank you. And I'd like to hand over to Martin at the Atlantis bookstore and everybody gathered there. Please, over to you.
It's in fact Alistair first. I must.
And then following my humble little few words, Martin has got some interesting stuff to add. I just want to put it into context. I want to thank, obviously, Hasu for giving us the answer. What happened, Fratres, is that I started looking at the first and second grades of the SRI rituals, and I didn't know what the gates of life were. So what happens is our celebrant says to the conductor, lead the aspirant to the gates of life, where the ancients will unfold the elemental proofs. So you heard the proofs in what Hasu was saying. But the gate of life, is this saying to us, is the candidate the gate of life, or are the ancients the gates of life? So there's two questions for you, Hasu. The third question is, the Buddhists have 8 gates of life, which are the chakras you mentioned, and there is another gate of life that has 7 gates of life.
Yes.
So as you said, this whole what is the gate of life in our ritual that we've overlooked, I certainly have for years and years and years, certainly has a lot of underlying meanings. And I can see on the look on your face that you found some of them. I don't think we'll get to the bottom of them, but you've done a fabulous job, and I thank you for what you've done.
Alistair, thank you for being the inspiration for me sort of trying to do something like this. But I think with the question you asked about whether it's a candidate or the 4 ancients, I think it's a candidate because the 4 ancients are the elements who are the reflection of the physical makeup of the candidate. Within the candidate is the 9 gates.
Yeah.
And those 9 gates are the city that his soul, spirit, goodness resides in. And in that ceremony, to me, when I went through the ceremony, it reminded me of to look inwards through myself and through my, through the visual sight, when I was able to see the light, to observe that this is all material. The spirituality is within, and how you're guided. The elements are only giving you the energy to create the strength to carry on in the life of other parts of life as a journey.
Thank you. And Martin has a question for you.
Right. Actually, I have some observations. So first and foremost, Hasu, thank you very much for this. How wonderful. And this is a warning to anyone in SRIA or considering joining. You have any specialization and you join our society, and you'll be called on. Right? If you're a pagan and you're into animals, someone will be calling you to tell you how to ask them how to sort of deal with their cat. If you're Jewish, you're going to be coming here talking about King Solomon Temple. Hasu, because he's of the Hindu tradition, he gets called on to talk about this. So first and foremost, I'd like to talk about how to die. The teachings of Freemasonry are really concerned with moral death. They're saying that there may be a circumstance that arises whereby you'll have a choice of losing who you are or losing your life. And you should make sure you, in those circumstances, you lose your life. You've got to keep your integrity. It's more important than anything else. The yogic texts do indeed have explicit instructions on how to die, as in at a point when it's favorable, when you know you're going to die, what things you can do to transverse better. The Shiva Samhita, for example, lists certain points you should focus your attention on. But these are specialist instructions for a yogic practitioner who is aware of the value, the winds of the body, or has practiced a skill that involves going beyond the body already. There are also some of these hints at these in the Veda, when you are going to pierce the sun, when you're going to go through to the next place. So there are overt instructions on how to die, but they're skillful.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's probably why Hasu would have to do another whole talk on this. On how
Well, I'll be delighted to.
Yes.
Now that summer is here. But Martin, great observations, and thank you for that, because there are other bits, and those who are into the deepest part of yogic knowledge also know how to release the soul when they die, but where to place the foot, the heel of the foot, so the soul cannot go in the wrong direction. It goes through the last chakra. So
yes, which brings me to my next point, Hasu, which I think I'd like to share. In this Hindu yogic milieu, there are presumptions of a base of knowledge or a certain attitude towards things that we may not have here. Hasu mentioned about, well, it's not the female reproductive organ, not a gate of life. Surely it's the ultimate gate of life.
Yes.
And this is most certainly featured in the Vedic texts, the Upanishads, and the yogic texts. And indeed, even these energy points, these chakras, are sometimes they use yoni as the female
starting point,
as a synonym. So it's a really important thing to express to anyone watching this, that within this attitude, imagine, it's quite hard for us to let go of society's views. Imagine if you viewed the female yoni as a sacred thing, whereby all places of spiritual sanctity, where energy and creativity came through, could be referred to as one. That's a really different viewpoint. Now, I just saw a question in the chat, Hasu, which I'll repeat to you. I will hand over. They're asking about the how the chakras and the points of life and the Sifroth and the Tree of Life crossover. In the Kabbalistic tradition, there are points which are like the chakras. They're called gal, and they are roughly equivalent of this Sifroth.
The nodes.
Anyway, enough of me. I will hand back to Shane now.
Can I just comment on what you said? Also, when you mentioned the energy and the yoni, remember that when the chakra, the rising energy is feminine. It rises from the female to reach the male, which is at top. We call it Shakti rising to meet Shiva, to meet the male. So, as you very well observed there, that it is the feminine energy emanating from the yoni that rises up to join with Shiva, the male energy, to create a union.
Thank you, Hasu.
Thank you, both of you there. I think that's fascinating points that were raised. I'd like to hand over to Boris. Thanks for your patience, Boris. Over to you.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Hasu. And I just wanted to, on a personal note, thank Hasu for being a mentor and an inspiration, one of my best friends, and somebody who also brought me into the SRA, and for being such a wonderful Freemason and bringing Masons from all around the world and indeed people with spiritual interests. Hasu is a person who really focuses on this kind of international network, as many friends and companions as many of us on this call know. So thank you, Hasu, for decades of outstanding work on bringing, I think this, Shane, this what we're doing now with your initiative, with this international Zoom thing, I think it's something which I think Hasu was working on for so many years, right? Bringing people from different even orders and Masonic interests into one platform. So that's really, I think, a culmination of decades of his work. And I think Hasu for me is a reminder of that we should never forget the critical impact of Hindu tradition, of Vedic intelligence on all the spiritual work. People who are dealing with this, who are researching, who are doing practices, I think know this, but I think our society, our civilization is kind of, fortunately, this happens in waves, right? There was the 20s, the 60s. Now, with different, as the world wakes up, every couple of decades, we go back to the ancient tradition, and 3,000-4,000 years ago, and we look at not only these texts but practices, and in medicine and in music and in chanting and meditation. Also astrology. For me, the Vedic, it's the oldest science we have, in fact. And I think Hasu shares with me many books. I learned so much. I became a big fan of Veda Vedanta due to kind of Hasu's, not that he promoted, he just opened my eyes to so many things. And so I think that he's always somebody who kind of shares books and shares different articles, and my bookshelf is full of input from his side. Beautiful input, Martin, by the way. I would love to hear more, and I'm sure I will definitely follow your website and what you do. So very important points. I don't have so much. I'm so overwhelmed and thrilled with hearing Hasu that I don't have a smart question. I just might maybe ask, because for me, kind of the Hindu tradition is always about practice, right? It's about practical things, not philosophizing, but actually doing things. So also, I know in my yoga practice, you always bring attention to certain parts of your body in a way, and even to dissipate the mind, you bring attention to your little finger or to your nostrils or to your breath. So these gates, do you know by meditation, do you practice that you kind of bring the attention to because these gates are gates where our sense perceptions come, right? How we perceive reality in the world and actually change our reality. So is there something that you do in a kind of practical manner in touching these gates, or they're mostly kind of listed in the text? Thank you.
Well, personally, on a personal note, I don't practice anything as a formalized yoga practice, because I it's all wonderful. Maybe I look at it this way: what makes you feel good, what makes you satisfied, and what makes your energy feels balanced, then that is good. It's not what's written in a book and do it this way or that way, because all you're doing is then following a trend. So I don't do. I just sit down somewhere in a corner, just don't think about anything, don't listen to anything, close my eyes and just blank myself. And I try to roll my eyes inwards, to look inwards at myself, so see the light or darkness, see the aura of my own self through my own eyes, see where I lack things. But I've not sort of gone in the way of saying that for a specific organ, if you do a specific type of meditation or exercise, it may work, or it works, because I don't do it, so I cannot be I cannot pontificate about something that I don't practice. But as I said, Boris, I also appreciate your very kind words. Thank you very much for what you said about me, and I look forward to catching up next weekend.
Thank you very much, Boris. I'd like to add a comment, please, regarding the symbolism and the function of the yoni. So on one level, it symbolizes, as with all of the gates that you mentioned, there are orifices, and they are receptive, particularly the yoni is receptive in one aspect, but then it's also productive as well.
Yes,
it
yes.
issues forth.
Yes.
And the same with the eyes. It was really fascinating for me. You were speaking about which of the, like for instance, the eyes, we rely upon our eyes to process information and then formulate our relationship with the world around us, and also our listening and so on. I understand that as there was a very famous hypnotherapist, Dave Ellman, and he did a lot of work in surgical theatre with surgeons to encourage them to communicate in a way that was mindful of the fact that the hearing is the last sense to leave the person, even if they're anesthetized. That often what he discovered is that the patient could still hear what people were talking about. So he encouraged them to make sure that how they communicated verbally whilst they were operating on a patient was mindful of the fact that on some level the person could still hear them. So I would say that our hearing is a very prominent sense that we utilize and we take for granted so much. We look at things, but we don't really necessarily perceive on other levels what it is we're observing. And I would say that the eyes, for instance, they're receptive, but also they are active. And so in quantum physics, when there's the theory of consciousness that when we observe something, it influences the outcome of whatever that may be. And so our eyes actively reach out. When we listen to something, we train ourselves to feel, like our hands reach out if we want to feel something, to understand what it is through the sense of touch. Likewise, our eyes reach out to be able to see. Our ears reach out to be able to perceive what we're listening to. And so I think there's this dual aspect to these senses. I'd welcome any thoughts you might have on this. I have a personal experience, by the way, of many years of a Qigong practice that's referred to as 5 gates breathing from the Chinese tradition. And the 5 gates are the crown, the balls of both feet, and the center of both palms. And so there's particular methods that one would reach out, like the branches and leaves of the tree, reaching up toward the heavenly realms, if you like, and from the palms reaching out and sensing the world all around us, in the created world around us, and then from the balls of the feet deeply into the earth with our connection with the earth, and developing our capacity to extend our sensory capacity beyond the physical frame.
Yes. Well, it's very interesting you mentioned that. There are many recorded cases of amputees who still feel their limbs. So the system doesn't realize that the arm has been amputated, or a leg, or other parts of the body. The brain still has that image or the sensation of that limb existing. So this is something that again happened. As some of you know, I'm partially sighted, so I only got middle vision. So when I have to walk, I have to use my ears because I have to listen to things. If I look down, I might not see a step, but I might see or hear some movement that might say, "Oh, look, I better not move there or go there or do something." So I think what happens is that there is a balancing, that our other senses take over and balance what is missing. In a way, I think that is how the brain operates, or how the gate, or if the soul the soul within us keeps us in that balanced form by saying, okay, I'll take a bit off here to put a bit there to balance the scales.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Hasu. Anthony, thanks for your patience, and we'd like to hand over to you, Anthony. Go ahead.
Hasu, great presentation. I really enjoyed it. Superb. I really like the link between the 9 gates and the physical body and our senses, and especially the numbers that you mentioned. I have one question related to this number, then another one. You mentioned the army made up of 360 male and 360 females that represented time, night, and day.
Yeah.
Was this before the Babylonians divided time on the basis of the number 60?
That
So
is a very interesting.
This was made before the.
The Vedas are about, they're dated between 3,000 to 7,000 years, and you take any point within that, and it could be the correct period for the Vedas when they were written, the Upanishads and the. So the thing,
the Vedas, you mean?
Yeah, I would feel that there must have been an interaction or some sort of a
influence.
Yes, meeting of ideas and understanding each other's principles and sciences. Because there were many ancient universities. One which was very famous was the city of Taxala, where you used to get many thousands of students coming from all over, as far as Greece to study also. So, and this was much later, but those principles must have been set up long before for someone to start teaching them as a subject familiar.
Okay. Another thing concerning the soul, someone asked, in which chakra does the soul reside? As far as I remember, someone asked this question.
Well,
in my humble opinion, I think if we drew a small parallelism between the tree of life, the Sephirotic tree of life of Kabbalah, and the chakras, we might have a sort of similitude or parallelism. The Malkut Sephirot would correspond to the root chakra, then the Yesod to the sacral, and both Netzach and Hod to the solar plexus, and the heart chakra is the center. So I do think that the soul resides in the heart chakra and the balance between all the chakras or all the Sephirot, which is Tiferet and in Kabbalah. It's in my humble opinion. And one more simple
just
question.
An observation
sorry for taking
on
the
that.
time. Yeah.
Just an observation that why would you want to imprison the soul in one?
No, it's not
when the 7 chakras make the 7 chakras make a complete unity. So the soul should be part of the whole rather than a single.
Okay.
That's my thought, because otherwise you're imprisoning the soul in one part of your if you following the chakra system, only one activity, one process, whereas the others become what value do they have?
Yes, but can't we identify it with its center? So we pinpoint it as far as the heart chakra as the center. I don't know.
Look, these are all very subjective matters. If you can feel comfortable that this is where it exists, so be it. Because what we discuss and what we talk about are ancient knowledge based on what has been passed down. It's not scientific proof of chakras, but it's the philosophical, spiritual ideas of energy flows and the nature of our existence. So you could if you feel happy that my soul resides in this chakra because it makes me feel good, then I think that's what happiness is about.
Nice. This brings me to my last question. Sorry for taking the time. Concerning the 9 gates, you said that we can live through knowing how to enjoy and to use these gates to lead a healthy life. But these gates depends on our physical body in the physical realm. So we can experience this physical realms. We need these 9 gates so we can gather impressions, so we can see them internally, if you want, in our internal, let's say, consciousness. But if the physical realm is considered as Maya or illusion, as per the Hindus, shouldn't reality being experienced only inwardly?
it's a balance experience. If you don't have the balance between the two,
Yeah,
you have to, like we talk about chakras, balancing the chakras. Sheen talked about his were, the four and the balancing. If you don't balance everything, the universe is a balanced entity, no matter how much chaos we see. But that chaos has its balance on the opposite side. Otherwise, we'll be tilting. So nothing is not in balance. I think it's on our perception that things are tilting one way or the other. But I think we very much should think in terms of if I feel comfortable, it gives me joy and gives me happiness and makes me spiritually in a well-being state. Then I think that's how you should do. You should follow the rules.
Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you. Couldn't have said it better. Thanks a lot, guys. And Hasu, you are amazing.
Bless you. Thank you.
I agree with that completely,
Yeah.
Anthony. Yeah, thank you very much for those questions. And I'll share with you, there's a very dear friend of mine who shared with me a saying that he heard from a Chinese master of Bagua, which is a Chinese internal martial art. And the saying is, inside, outside, harmonize your emotions.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I've got Brig here. Once again, over to you, Brig.
Thank you, Shane. Hasu, at the risk of being boring, can I draw you back to your observations of life and possibly death? And I've got here the exhortation in the third degree of craft Freemasonry, emulation, to which I would like all those Freemasons to be remembered. To your mind, thus modelled by virtue and science, nature, however, presents one great and useful lesson more. She prepares you by contemplation for the closing hour of existence. And when, by means of that contemplation, she has conducted you through the intricate windings of this mortal life, she finally instructs you how to die. Right, now, Hasu, I have no doubt you deliberately intended to open Pandora's box, which I think you successfully achieved. Could I ask you, in your Masonic experience, have you, in any order, let alone craft Freemasonry, ever been involved in a discussion about the closing of one's mortal existence?
Yes, and I can tell you one thing. Remember that the ritual was written by those who were much more intellectually capable of hiding the truth by allegorical terminology. So there, I have now worked out in my little few gray cells that exist at my age, that the third degree actually doesn't fall. It's a very allegorical the death is very allegorical, and it actually represents another part of masonry, which may be reflective of the reasoning for the uniting of the two grand lodges, an adaptation of the needs of both. So the idea of nature instructing you how to die is very interesting. Nature instructing, what does nature do? Nature, you observe nature and you learn. You are actually the student forever and a day. What it instructs you, to me, the whole concept of nature and science in masonry is also more alchemical rather than purely symbolical, because nature, raw materials, through alchemical process, which is science, you convert it to a new form. So in a way, the hidden nature of the mysteries of nature and science, which is in the previous degree, now comes in the third degree. Now it's saying nature is instructing you how to die. But it's the previous degree is talking about the hidden mysteries of nature and science. So if they're hidden mysteries, you have searched for them, you should have found them. So now you should know and not waiting an instruction from nature on how to die.
Hasu, I thank you for your wisdom, dear brother.
I'm not wise. It's the company I keep. All of you.
Thank you very much, Brig. I'd just like to highlight there's a wonderful quote here. Thank you, Leonidas, for this. Khalil Gibran quote, "The body is the heart of the soul. It is yours to bring forth sweet music or confused sounds." I like that.
Very nice.
Martin and everybody at the Atlantis bookstore, thanks for your patience. Over to you.
Alexis, yeah, 2 observations and 1 question.
Could I ask you, please, before you continue, you have on the Zoom software, you can blur the background. You have that setting on at the moment. It's possible to unblur the background.
Mysterious secret chiefs in the background here.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
No, it's not. It's not on.
I turned it off.
Oh, is it not? No? Well, everybody's blurry. And occasionally you come into shot focus, or just the face of Alexis comes into shot.
So I may suggest that the speaker comes forth and sits in the...
I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
I don't want to go to the speaking chat. I'm comfortable here. Those 2 observations. So the closing of the main gate is covered in Ecclesiastes.
Yes.
The closing of the main gates is covered in Ecclesiastes, and it's also covered in the book of Revelations, and the opening of the gates. So the closing and the opening of the gates. My other observation, which is related to my question, is about marriage. So in the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita, the extract that you read, there's the marriage. This marriage between the masculine and the feminine aspects and the way we experience reality in the physical body. And I just wondered if you drew any correlations or inspirations with the chemical wedding. Also the marriage, and also the essentially the marriage. I think in the ancient Greek mythology, it's Psyche and Pneuma.
Thank you, Alex. You have a sixth sense that you read what I was thinking about of asking those members of the SRI if they think there's a parallel or similarities with the chemical wedding, and I think there is. But as I said, I've just sort of scratched the surface. What I would like to do, with the help of someone like you, Alex, is that we create connections with other. You mentioned Ecclesiastes. It would be wonderful if we can add that and sort of create, because everything is linked, and unless we sort of redraw the links and bring everything together, which may have been lost in the past, we'll still keep all these bits separate. So maybe one of these days, Alexis, if you wish, we can sit down and you can educate me on the Ecclesiastes bit, and I can then sort of think of maybe adding a bit more into this thought process.
Just to add on that, particularly with the marriage, which is very important. It's very important in the Vedic scriptures. It's very important in a lot of the core scriptures, and about even the body. And the body in the gate is viewed as feminine. And when Shin was describing the yoni receives, but it can become active. Therefore, the unity between the two, the sort of dance that is done during life, can produce both effects. But there's a tertiary or quaternary effect. And I just wondered if you've drawn from your understanding of the Vedic scriptures a sort of parallel between the chemical wedding and the process that goes through the chemical wedding, and that, you know, there's various gates that are mentioned, there's various marriages that are mentioned, there's various experiences.
Yes.
Whether you saw any similarities between your description, and particularly in the Vedic description, and the description from Krishna as well.
Well,
Bhagavad Gita.
as I said, I definitely can see the links between the gates coming, you know, from this narrative from the Gita and the chemical wedding. But it's a question, you know, as I said, as many rabbit holes as there are, I thought I'll start small and then you know, dig further down.
Because I mean, just the basic level, I mean, there's some correlations that I've drawn, and it could be entirely wrong. But the gate of Brahm in yogism is the perineal, so it's
Yes.
the genital, the genitalia. It's not the highest center, which is Shiva, which is the death and the rebirth. And Shakti can be passive or active. And in Kabbalah, it can also be passive and active. It can be Shekinah and it can be Ruach. And
Yes.
And it's described in, even the soul can be described as masculine or feminine, passive, active. And people correct me by Neshama and I can't remember what the other one is, but there seems to be these correlations, and they all seem to relate.
Nefesh.
Nefesh.
Nefesh, yes.
Well,
Yes.
as much as I said, I haven't done that much research, that depth of work, but I'm looking forward to adding more to this and going through everything from other traditions, because
I can sense Alice is gearing you up for a second paper now. I can feel it going.
I'm emigrating to the North Pole. Now, as I said, I'll be very happy to sit down with anyone who feels that we can share. You know, I mean, the thing is, I can, as much as I can read in a book, I feel it's better if I talk to someone. You know, if you sit down and talk, the verbal conversation produces more ideas and thoughts than just reading a book and then paraphrasing whatever you read or think you've read.
Before we go, quickly throw in, I've just looked up the definition of gate, and with all the wonderful things we've been talking about, it's something that goes in a hole in a wall or a fence. In other words, a gate is two things. Yeah, there is a opening and then there's a closing. So when we talk about these gates of life, are they open or closed? Throw that one in. That was a question. Are the 9 gates of life open or closed?
It's time for you to talk about Pratyahara. I'll let you take over.
Well, Alistair, you always come up with wonderful double rabbit holes, you know. yeah, you know, said no, but that's a very interesting question to ask. You know, you're talking of basically, are there swing doors, you know, open and closed both ways? There could be. I mean, again, it's very, you know, it just has to be something that we have to understand, because we can't, you know, we are taking the view of a door opening on in one direction. But if you want to look at the door opening in another direction, of course, then you have to create that narrative around it. I haven't read a narrative with the swinging doors, you know, but I will definitely search for it now and see if there is anything anywhere. But isn't human nature like the swinging doors, you know? And our existence as such, that we move from one to the other side depending on what suits us.
Yes, well, Hasu, it seems to me that your narrative is very much about mastering these gates.
Yes.
You know, we love our eyes, we want to be able to see accurately, but we don't want to be moved towards things and controlled, you know. We all know someone whose eyes are perhaps directing their life in a bit of a strange direction, or someone whose taste is directing themselves in a different direction. And
Yes.
we need to be the masters of them. And likewise, it seems to me in yoga, there's both the perfection, we want them to work and be wonderful, but there's also the closing off. You know, we talk about this mudras, actually yoni mudra, there's mudras
Yes, yeah.
close these off as well. So it seems to me that Alistair's correct, that it's the opening and closing at your will is the answer.
Yes.
You can be the master of the gates.
But you can close your gates anyway. Put a headphone on and your ears are closed.
Well, I mean, some early yoga,
You won't hear anything, so you know.
And earplugs, you know, they do exist. You use them.
So this is all, you know, is a wonderful way of expressive thinking, and I think it's wonderful that you are bringing up these of what ifs. You know, it's like a meal. You know, put too much salt and you'll go. You know, but you know, if you know how to put the right amount of salt, the food will taste good. If you take the right amount of information and hear the right things, your thoughts will be good, your soul will be satisfied, and you'll live a better life.
So save it for paper too, yes. Next week.
I'm away.
But before I hand over, I thought it might be a good time to just translate a few of the things that have been said for those who are watching who aren't Rosicrucian scholars. So first and foremost, Hasu's observation about Masonic ritual, observing that nature teaches you to die, it really strung a sort of chord in anyone here who's read Rosicrucian text, because in Rosicrucian teachings, the idea is that you will have the Bible, either sacred writings or tradition, and nature and the book of nature as your teacher, and being able to read the book of nature was like a high enlightened thing. You don't need a teacher when nature is your guide. So I'd never even thought about it from that point of view. Hasu, that just cut straight through. Wow, you know, that's what it could be meaning, is that nature teaches.
Yeah, all of you are the inspiration.
Yes. The second thing about the chemical wedding, some people may not be aware of this. There is a very beautiful, symbolic but surreal Rosicrucian text called The Chemical Wedding, whereby there's a marriage in heaven that someone's visiting. And Alexis was very wisely saying, well, listen, you know, this is a marriage happening in this. Surely this Shiva and Shakti marriage is the same thing. Surely the serpent on the tree of life and the Kundalini are the same thing. Surely it's just different cultures. This must be a triangulation on the truth here. So that's what the reference there was to. I just thought I'd mention this for those who are just starting out. But I will hand back over to Shane.
Thank you very much, Martin. I'd just like to comment as well that in the internal martial art practice of Tai Chi, there are certain terminologies for a description of our, we train ourselves to be able to listen. So it's about the quality of our listening capacity. And there's what's referred to as tingjing, which is listening energy. And that's kind of a general, sort of fairly superficial level of listening. And then a deeper level of that is referred to as dongjing. And dongjing means comprehending energy. And that's a deeper level, because we can listen to something, but just because we're listening to it doesn't necessarily mean that we understand what we're listening to, that we comprehend what we're listening to. And there's and in relation to nature being our teacher, I think a very valuable thing for all of us, each of us as individuals, and goodness knows, my hope and I pray that more of humanity will learn how to train themselves in the skill of listening and the skill of perceiving, to be able to, instead of looking at the outer form of the things all around us, particularly the other forms of sentient life all around us, there's a wonderful documentary I may have mentioned in the past that was released only several years ago, called Aware, Glimpses of Consciousness, and it describes research that's being done by various types of scientists to arrive at, hopefully, a better understanding of what consciousness is. And one of the women scientists quotes something that really struck a chord with me, and I've remembered this. And she says, our problems in the world are largely the result of the fact that when we look at the living world around us, we see things, not beings. We look at the outer form of things, and we go, oh, that's a cat, or that's a tree, or whatever. But we don't really perceive the being, the sentient form of life at the very center of that particular expression of divinity. And I would say that one of the really important things for all of us as individuals, and hopefully collectively, that we can work towards is training ourselves in our listening skills, so that we begin to develop a deeper perception, a deeper understanding of what are we actually listening to? What are the promptings that we listen to? When you described that we can shut ourselves off by putting earphones on, that's only shutting ourselves off from the outside sounds. But what about the sounds on the inside? And so if we listen inwardly, what are the sounds we're listening to? What is the internal dialogue we're having with ourselves? We could do this with the earplugs, but on the inside, what are we tuning into? What are we really listening to? And is what we have been listening to worth listening to, or is it not worth listening to? You know, I'll stop there. Thank you. I welcome any thoughts on this.
Thank you. I mean, that's a brilliant, brilliant observations on the conversation, because what I said was probably out of jest, but you have sort of taken that and created a narrative out of it, which is wonderful in a way. All right, you've blocked the sounds from the outside, but you haven't blocked the sounds from within yourself.
Anyway, thank you, everybody. Brig, over to you. Oh, sorry, no, I beg your pardon, Brig, if you could hold on. Leo, thanks for your patience, Leo. I've seen your hand up for some time.
Thank you very much. Hasu, thank you for this fantastic lecture. It's such enjoyable and inspirational in the same time. I have a question, maybe, knowing how broad is your knowledge and also experience. And it is related on the consciousness and your allegory of the king and queen. So I will just start a short introduction to explain my question. So there was I don't know exactly, but sometimes in the second part of last century, there was a very famous experiment which in that time proved that consciousness or conscious decision, conscious will does not exist. And this was the Libet experiment, probably most of you know it. So this is, let's say, proof that your decision of doing something is actually done after the real action in your mind is done. So you are becoming aware of what you will decide after the decision is already done. So this was the idea of this experiment. And then during the time, of course, this was there were another different and contrary experiment done, but this one is quite famous still, and is used to many as a base of proof, or as a proof that consciousness actually does not exist. And there is I think it is from Buddhist lore, but you might know better, number of senses which we know all is added with one additional sense, which is the sense of the sensations of the mind, which is very close to what is Libet proofing. So there is this prove that what we are experiencing as thoughts of what we are thinking from the lower of our memories and whatever there is, we are, or let's say somebody in us is becoming aware of these thoughts, of this sensation, the same way as we are aware of what we are seeing or hearing and other stuff from other senses. So this is an additional sense which actually is giving us ability to sense what we are thinking and what we are experiencing inside. And then there is going back to your lecture, then there is this question, what and how do you see this allegory of the king and queen, which might be in a way related to this, what we are experiencing, including these internal sensations, with what really and who really is experienced everything that is experienced. I hope you might get what I wanted to say, but
let me start with the whole concept of scientists and experimentation. Scientists have a brief. They're given the QED before the problem is set. So they are, you're basically virtually given what you are looking to achieve. So it's not open-ended as we may think in scientific terms. Or so when you said about the consciousness and the scientists, I think to me it is very much of an idea that okay, let's see if there is consciousness in the state in the form that you have described. They already really set the line as to what they're going to look for. So how they're going to find it is not the point. But to me, I think that the point is that the scientists would always narrow their search just to reach that conclusion, rather than see beyond that one aim or one road or one process. So sometimes I think we tend to have an idea that science and scientists, if they have brought their experiments or their ideas and backed it up with a scientific process or theory, is right, which I don't always agree with. But I always feel that there is always a bit more and beyond. But again, Leo, thank you very much for those comments. I need to have a little think about what you said, and sort of try to think about this gate, being within the gates and consciousness and the soul and how everything fits in. Do we go beyond that? It is again, remember, as I said earlier on, it is very subjective. And I always the other day I said, and I thought, oh, and a thought came to me, and I said, and the thought, I put it down, and it was just very simple. Nothing exists except our imagination and a delusion of knowing the past to find the future. So we are delusional creatures at times. We have we always think, because somebody's done that, I'll got the answer. But no, we don't. There's no real answer unless we look for it, and we go for a way of expressing our own views. Would you consider, Leo, to be just a thought is good, because it expresses your own satisfaction at resolving a thought or an issue or a problem, spiritual or esoteric or anything else. Because I don't think that there is a real clear answer to any of these subject matters that we talk about. These are just very much opinions, experiences, and in this particular group, a search, hopefully with the help of others, to find no solutions. We can never find a final solution, but at least give us an additional light on our path.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. There's a friend of mine who has stated this this saying, which I understand is likely to be a Sanskrit saying. I'm not going to attempt the Sanskrit here, but the translation, it may be familiar to you, Hasu, and I wonder maybe to Martin as well, is go beyond the beyond, all hail the goer. In terms of our mutual searching and questing in these studies.
But there is no beyond, is there, really? It's just our imagination that we're going beyond something. But beyond, what is beyond?
Exactly.
That's another question for deeper discussion.
This is a quote from the end of the Buddhist Heart Sutra.
Yes.
Where they're going to step beyond a limited view of things to see the reality. So that's where it's from. How lovely.
Wonderful. Thank you, Martin. Brig, over to you.
Thank you, Shane. Hasu, I just want to go back to Shane's comment on about listening to. And as far as I'm concerned, my experience is any of us are not going to find without what lies within. And many of us in the Western tradition surely possibly do not identify with Buddhist, Hindu teachings. Perhaps we would be well advised to look at our Nordic and Norse traditions. And basically, would you agree we have to find our own way?
Yes, I 100% agree, because the only way which is satisfying is the way that you follow and gives you peace of mind. Because when you follow someone else's path, it is littered with their problems. Your path is the vision that you see and the path you wish to create for yourself. I mean, we look at, listen to all these very highly intelligent seers, gurus, but they all have their problems. It's not that they're as human as you and me. They express themselves in a higher language, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot be the same as them expressing it in your own language. And you mentioned your Norse tradition. I think there's a lot of. I mean, I've not done a lot of reading or research, but if I look at the Vedas, the Pensions, and the Norse traditions, there's so much of the same things. The gardens, the nectar, the foods, the palaces, the kings, the warriors. The princesses, the princes, the rule. Hang on, how many thousand miles apart? Same stories. You can take your imagination and run wild, or take the philosophy and create your own satisfaction.
Hasu, thank you as always, dear bro. Love to you.
Bless you.
Thank you once again, Brig. And Anthony, over to you.
Hello again.
Hi,
I'm
Anthony.
enjoying this conversation. It's so thought-provoking, guys. Hello, Martin. Hello, everyone. And thanks again, Hasu. Okay, one thing, as per what also Leo said, if we want to say that we have two choices in life, to live a life led by a mechanical consciousness, which says that most of our actions and emotions and thoughts are predetermined by our previous experiences. So maybe most of our actions aren't our own thoughts. We are not conscious of them. So it's a mechanical process, or either we can live an active life where we take part of in the decision making in everything we are feeling and so forth, which goes back to the 9 gates. As you said, Hasu, we should be the masters of the 9 gates. This is the conclusion of the story. So maybe if we can reverse the act, make the active passive, because most of our lives we are being passive without even knowing this. So we are only conscious in small bits of our lives. Maybe if we reverse this polarity and we make the active passive, and we always become conscious of our thoughts and actions and emotions, then we will get to this balance that you talked about before. I don't know if I got this right.
Yes,
I'm trying to wrap everything up in my brain.
Yeah, no,
So reversing
I think,
the polarity.
you said it very nicely. I mean, I can't add anything to that except, when you mentioned this, soul, the past. Remember
Yes.
that your new birth is new experiences.
Yeah.
What you're born in the sort of traditional rebirth idea is you're reborn either higher or in a lower life cycle. So you're not carrying your past. What you've done is already paid the price of your past by being born either lower, because your life, your soul and your the body which fed the soul, the spirituality and all the good things, was itself the 9 gates were selfish in a way.
Oh, nice. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Anthony. Regarding the so-called lower gates, in Kabbalistic working, if one wishes to work with a particular sphere, then we would ideally work with the sphere above that and draw things down if we're going to work with that particular sphere. If we want to manifest things in the material, then we work from the spiritual first and then invite that to have an effect in the world around us. The lower gates, so-called lower gates, from the perspective of the microorganisms in the earth, for instance, the function of the excretory glands, organs, are a blessing to the microorganisms in the earth. It's food and fuel for them. And it's through that fertilizer that life emerges anew. So I'd like to just kind of put forward my particular opinion about this, that I don't think there is such a thing as the lower gates. They are equally as important as any of the so-called higher gates. They just have a different function in the cycle of life.
I mean, that's the lowest of Muladhara. Yes, you're talking of the lowest chakra as well, the starting chakra. But that is connected with Prithvi, Earth, which Earth is the stabilizing force and supports humanity. So, you can't say, it's just a organ, a functional organ, but in the sort of philosophy, in the sort of spiritual realm, it is much more the creative, not the creative, but the supportive role that keeps all the other. It keeps all the other gates. It's the foundation of the other gates, if you want to put it in a simpler way.
Thank you, Hasu. Mario, you have your hand up. Over to you, Mario.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you. So first of all, I wanted to thank Hasu. Hasu, you are great. I have a special relationship with Hasu because the very first time I joined to MetCall, I met Hasu. This is a fact that by our, people like us is not without a meaning, a profound meaning with capital M. So you are an example of humility. This is the most important thing you teach, of humility and stability. And of course, what you've just said to us, what you've taught us, is a reflection of a man who fulfilled the balance in his life. And this is the balance of the gates you mentioned, which is absolutely part of the conversation we had regarding regarding the meaning of life, the end or the beginning, how to live, how to die, etc., etc., etc. By the way, I notice, at least for my cultural background, I'm a perennialist, as you know. Some of you knows that I follow perennialism, and I understand that the thinking of René Guénon based, the foundations of René Guénon's system of thinking is on the Vedanta and on the primordial tradition of India. This is something that must be kept in mind also because, and this is also so evident even to me in this conversation, that was a detachment in the modern era in Europe. This is very important regarding Europeans that are listening to me. That was a detachment of a primordial tradition at all levels. And this is the reason why we are so desperate, like you, Shane, like me, like many other ones, to be attached to a tradition, to go beyond, to understand the perennial truth. And this is something that we have to be attached to, I don't know, a certain principle of Buddhism, Tai Chi, as you said, or many other examples that I listened to this afternoon. And this is precisely the great contribution of Azu is this. It's giving us an instrument, in order to think over ourselves and to open to the main gate, which lies beyond that. For perennialism is the perennial truth, the Sophia perennis. This is the fact. Again, Azu, God bless you. Oh, thank you very much indeed for your...
Mario, you also have been an inspiration to me on so many messages and so many concepts that you forward me and sort of ideas, which mean that I have to go and read a bit more or search a bit more. But as I said, this is the beauty of this forum, this family that we have, that what we know is a sum total of everyone's knowledge, and we should all enjoy what we can share, what little we know, as much as we know. There's no levels in knowledge. It's only knowledge itself that's the key. But so I was just going to share something else I thought about. The lower is that if you in the traditional Vedas and Hindu, the lotus flower is very, very important. Now, the lotus grows in a swamp, out of the mud and dirt of a swamp, and you then get this purity. So, in a way, if you look at the allegorical connection, you could think the same way as the lower gates. That through those lower gates rises the most powerful energy.
Yeah, from the mud.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hasu. William, you've had your hand up for some time. Over to you, mate. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. I'm sorry if I misunderstood a little bit because I've been listening the whole time. Talking about senses and you're talking about... So the image of a gate is something that actually drew me into this whole subject, where I, became a student of Martin, and 4 years of practice. So that brings me to, I've made some notes here. The start of my point is practice. Like, if everything's rooted in this experimental practice, keep it up for long enough, it does appear that you perhaps detach times through constant meditation, sometimes in the night, sometimes practice, into a kind of dream world. And I know some people think that when you die, you enter a kind of dream, and this does make sense to me, because this is only gnosis anyway. It can't be proved, but if you keep it long enough, sooner or later you're going to see something in the outside world, or you're going to meet someone else that you perhaps know, and you'll be able to confirm something between each other. So that acts as like a personal proof, kind of gnosis. Like, I can't put this into anyone else's head, but I know that I actively do disconnect in some way of, on the screen, and go into this kind of dream beyond the body. So I was watching this video on Buddhism last night, and it was saying that there are all these constituent parts. In other words, the personality, the feelings, the emotions. And what it's doing is it's gradually taking these away, deconstructing them until there's nothing left. And you sit there and you think, it's kind of a disappointment in a way. It's because it does appear that all your senses, everything you're going through, everything you experience, the love, the hate, the challenges, the efforts that you make, it does appear to be creating some kind of mirror double or
apologies to you, William. Could you unmute yourself again, please? I accidentally muted you trying to mute somebody else.
All right, where did I get to? Where did I get to?
Where did we mute you?
William, I believe you were saying that there's a certain point in our practice when a gateway is opened, and that gateway can be through someone else or through a deep insight.
Okay, I'll go again from the beginning, but quicker this time. Through constant practice, sooner or later, you're going to have experiences of entering a dream world, of detaching from the body, and sooner or later, you're going to meet someone that you know that you're attached to emotionally or through the practice, and you're going to have a confirmation on both sides. In other words, I dreamt we were together last night, and they're like, yeah, we were together. Or you see something in the world that's either happening that you shouldn't be able to see or will happen soon. So that is a personal gnosis, proof that there is a soul, if you like. There is something that is the body that can disconnect a little bit like the idea of that Egyptian bar or something that can fly off. So that obviously that only comes through consistent, unless you're lucky, comes through consistent practice. So when you have that gnosis, you can't put it to any other human being and they've shared that experience with you, even though all the documented evidence, the amount of people who've said that throughout the ages should be evidence enough. You're just left with the gnosis. So in the Buddhist tradition, I was listening last night to something that was saying that all the constituent parts of a human, the personality, the feelings, the emotions, gradually you take these away and realize that they're not you until there's nothing left, like this kind of nirvana, if you like. I may have misunderstood it. I find that a little disappointing because I know through personal gnosis that there is something beyond the body. You see that how permanent it is, what happens to that double that we're creating. That's the point where you have to pick up on tradition. Do we get reborn? Do we eventually think the Egyptian way, become a star? Go to heaven in some way if we've been bad? Do we face ourselves in that dream that we've created? Do we have to disentangle? I'm talking about particularly awful people in that sense. So I guess that's what I'm saying. There does appear to be, just in case it was missed off the beginning, this all begins with the idea of a gateway, that a symbolic gateway led me on this whole journey. So yeah, the gnosis that there is a soul, but we can't know exactly what happened to that soul once we're fully dead, if you like.
Sorry, William, that's an interesting concept and question, because sort of coming from the idea that the soul exists to start with, the starting point. Why? I mean, if there's a supreme soul, why would he abandon a soul to go and live in the most difficult circumstances with those who have no understanding of the nature of existence, the human body? We're just the vessel that is corrupt. The soul is incorruptible. Now, it's interesting because the ultimate goal of the soul is to unite with the supreme soul, to find the ultimate energy. So every step it hopes the soul as a soul. I mean, there are quite a few deep discussions in some of the Puranas and the Vedas about the number of rebirths a soul takes to reach the final. soul. So they're also got a numericus of calculations. You may be carrying the soul on its maybe 585th journey, so it's still got another 400,000 journeys to do, or whatever, the numbers. But as a vessel, I think, as I said earlier on, the soul's journey is that, think of yourself a nice comfortable car or 1920s Model T driving on a bumpy road, Yeah, the car is you, and the driver, the soul, trying to rough ride in this old model and today's modern version of a comfort. So you in a comfort, I suppose the thing is satisfaction and how you treat your own self. First and foremost, the most important thing to me is how you treat your own self, how you respect your own self.
Sure. Can I just one more thing? And that is, I think the idea of stripping away all the constituent parts of the body, mind, feelings, actions, whatever, does leave you with nothing, but your life experience is creating something alongside of you. That,
it is.
I mean, it's like both. Obviously, just opinion, but like it seems that both are true. That we are nothing, and yet the constituent parts that add up to zero do create something. But how permanent that is a mystery that we just have to have faith, trust in the mystics, if you like. I guess that was just my point, but obviously we can't resolve that here, so I'm just pleased to add something there.
Thank you, William. Thank you. I was just going to say, Sheen, that
go ahead,
we also sort of come from a background of Freemasonry, and Masonic performance of ritual has again a very much of an underlying message, and I think we tend not to, because modern lives, like everything else, we just want to go through everything as quickly as possible and then go on to the next thing. Lodge meetings, we just want to have diet, have a ceremony, ritual, have dinner, go home, and that's until the next time. So we don't actually enjoy the after experience of sitting down and asking ourselves, why did we go through that? Why did I, what did it mean to me, my five senses? What did it do for my soul? How did I energize myself? I don't think we do that anymore. Sorry, Martin, that's Masonic.
Before handing over to Martin and everyone at the Atlantis bookstore, I just want to highlight this. It's a very interesting question in the chat from Atma. Thank you, Atma. It says, many thanks to Hasu and you and all. May I ask Hasu about the other gates of the body at the breasts, navel, and fontanelle? Also about information that comes into the consciousness apparently without a sense organ, like feeling of being watched, direction sense, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that interesting. While we were having this discussion, I was thinking of one of the other, or a couple of other gates, those he mentioned, but one of the most deepest one that I think that we all miss out on is actually the umbilical cord. What goes through that? Because that goes into a gate into the body, which does it just carry nutrients or does it carry consciousness? Does it actually have, does it carry the soul through with it? So I think we could look at all these other Atma, we could look at all these with various understandings of how the body works, the physical body. But I think what Atma is asking about the breasts, the other organs, every organ has some sort of it is a gate to something. But I mean, there are other things in the Vedas about the 72 forms, So, there are so many things that we could become quite lost in our own selves. And sometimes I feel that we could actually be asking too many questions without resolving the answers for the first ones. But Asma, if you have any of the ideas, please, unmute yourself and share your thoughts as you ask the question.
Yes, Hasu, I think in his question, which wasn't conveyed to you, he said, I'd really love to unmute myself, but it's very noisy where I am.
Okay.
So himself like that. Okay.
So he's got the earplugs on.
He's in the wrong realm.
Yes.
Oh, so yeah, Alistair asks, now that we have got your attention, whether the various people in here may ask you things.
Just, do we have any? There was just literally a comment potentially to close on, and it was about the gentleman with his headphones that said was coming in and out intermittently, and he was sharing his own experiences, and about why potentially we come into existence, and also why in your story, your analogy, why the individual, the soul, would like to experience the pleasures of the body and the stresses of the body as well, the dissatisfactions, the suffering. There was a paragraph in Shimon ben Halevi's Introduction to Kabbalah that I read many years ago, and it was very out of context in his book. So that's Warren Kenton, and he writes a series on Kabbalah, and it comes from the Sephardic mysticism. Where in the last paragraph of his introduction, which I didn't read in any of his other books, he has something quite profound. And he says, the reason for existence and life and consciousness is for God to behold God.
So there we have it. The whole of our existence is God thinking about himself a bit.
Beholding,
yes.
thinking.
Yeah. Yes.
Thinking is a different thing.
Yeah.
Thinking is a different thing. I just found that very
I like that.
mind expanding, because beholding is something different, isn't it? It's something even quite painful, I would imagine. Yeah. Because even beholding yourself in all of your limitations, what you perceive as your, I mean, it's something that was very interesting. It's something very out of place in the book, actually. And it was literally the last paragraph of the
It sounds like it really stood out.
It was, for me it did. For me it did, yeah. I mean,
White Stone.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and it goes, I guess, to the question, the point that was made by a very observant person, that why is it that we wish to incarnate, we wish to experience these 9 gates, we wish to experience the pleasure? What is there to benefit?
But is it we who want to reincarnate, or is it the soul that resides in us? Because remember, the king is the reflection of the soul. Is the soul that resides in the body. So if the soul if the soul gets corrupted by the body's desires and living a good life, obviously it is also going to be suffering the same fate.
Choose yoga, not boga. Kit would like to add something for you now. Yeah.
Yes, so this is just following on from something that Shane was saying earlier, which I think was in response to someone else, about the lower gates. Just an observation, really. Of course, it's very important to know what to let go of in life. And I think those are the lessons of the lower gates. And if you're holding on to something, you have to let go before you can grasp something else. And of course, for the Masons who are listening, you may like the analogy of a stone carver. Of course, you have to chip away at the stone to let it reveal its beauty. So I think the lower gates have their lessons that are very important, even if we tend to prefer to focus on those more higher ones, really.
Very good.
Can I just make a comment? And I always love this idea of this stone analogy in masonry. All you're doing is polishing the surface. The inside of the stone still remains rough.
That's very true.
The question I had for you, Hassel, to bring us back.
Oh no!
Yeah, there we go. Well, I'm just going to re-quote back at you the SRIA ritual that started all this off. And it says, death is the gate of life, back to Briggs' question.
Yes.
So that was one of the first ancients. And the next ancient is talking about air being the gate of mystery. And then the next, that water is the temple of perfection. And finally, the last one, I can't see, the house of sanctification. So there's 5. So there's 3 more papers for you, following on from this one, if you wouldn't mind.
Alistair, you're so kind. You know, I wish I was sitting there and, you know, we could break open a bottle of whiskey and then, you know.
So, I mean, it's been I mean, looking around, we've all really enjoyed your conversation. I don't think that I'm ending this conversation. I'm just saying, you know, from my point of view, you really have opened a number of boxes, closed a number of boxes. We've discussed so many things. And it's been a pleasure to come along today from my own personal point of view. Thank you.
Alistair, thank you very much, as usual, to you for being a guide, being the instigator of me coming into the SRIA. I will never forget those meetings, but you know what? As I say, our journey
worthy of you.
No, but our journeys were meant and our paths were meant to cross, and I'm so pleased that my soul found your soul to make this journey together.
Oh, absolutely. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Hasu, I'd like to echo that as well. I think that's the beauty of this. Somebody described this as a family, and I completely agree.
Yes.
And there's an awful lot of love, genuine love and respect in this group. And yeah, we are the sum of our parts, but it's a beautiful thing that we have the opportunity to study and research and cross-reference and learn from each other in these ways. What a blessing it is. And I don't believe there's any coincidence whatsoever in the fact that we've been drawn into each other's orbit at this particular time in human history. I think it's a wonderful blessing, and thank you to all of you. It strengthens me personally to have the opportunity to listen to you all and learn from you all.
And appreciate all of you learned individuals who have supplied me with the inspiration for doing something like that. Because I'm not a presenter of any, so I hate presenting or writing papers. I just talk too much. But I'm really indebted to all of you for giving me the opportunity or trusting in me not to go beyond the point. But thank you very much, everyone.
Oh, no, sorry.
So I'd just like to, I think, give an opportunity for anybody else if they have any particular questions for Hasu before we finish for today.
So I was just going to mention there's a book which I'm going to order and I'm going to find where it's called 9 Gates, the Hasidic Mysteries, by a writer called Jiri Langer. So if anyone's interested, I think it might be worth looking at it through the mystical Jewish tradition.
Hasu, sorry to ask you to have to do this. Could you repeat that again, please? I was just
okay. It's a book called The 9 Gates, the Hasidic Mysteries, by an author called Jiri Jiri Langer, Langer.
Thank you very much, Hasu. So anybody else?
If you can send the name of book in the chat.
Yes, I could. I'll do that. I'll put in now.
Thank you, Hasu, if you could. And if anyone else has anything they'd like to ask or comment or share, please speak up now.
Let me just put this message in.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have done that early on, but There you go. Yeah.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Hasu. We've got that now in the chat. So for anyone who's interested, please copy that title and author's name. Thank you very much. And yeah, I'm just going to change the view here from the speaker view to the gallery, just so that we close things off with everybody on the screen at the same time. Yeah, on behalf of the Metropolitan Study Group of the SRIA, I'd like to thank you once again, dear Hasu. You're very, very loved, Hasu, by all of us. And thank you very much for your presentation today, and very, very thought-provoking subject. And thank you to everybody for all of your comments and questions and observations. It's wonderful to see you all. Atma, thank you as well. Love to you, sir. And yeah, it's wonderful to see all of you. Have a very blessed midsummer solstice, or solstice in general if you're elsewhere in the world. And I wish you a very, very blessed solstice. And we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Have a wonderful time, the rest of you who are gathered in London. Have a lovely rest of your evening. And yeah, peace to you all.